Hey everybody. Welcome to the 42nd episode of Quarkus Insights. We have one of our special and regular guests back, Stuart, who's going to be talking about some pretty awesome, pretty cool stuff in the new 1.13 release. The general topic of this episode is the cool stuff, like the noteworthy features that we're going to be seeing in a couple days with 1.13.
Yeah,
Right?
and just to clarify, the reason why we're doing it this week is because next Monday, where it would be released, is Easter Monday, so there'll be a bit quiet. So we said we would cover a bit early, and maybe it's a good time also to remind people that the way we release Quarkus is it's like a two-step rocket. Is that we first do Quarkus Core. So if you go to Maven Central now, you'll find Quarkus Core 1.13 is up there. But the platform or the thing that is driving all the tooling, all the defaults, bombs, etc., is going to be released this week because we're running the test verification that works, and that's going to happen, Thursday, I think, on Everest. So that's why, we are talking about now. You can actually use this if you want to. But the final one is going to be out later this week.
Let's go with some slightly unrelated news. Steve, how are we doing with the Quarkus World Tour?
We've done 3 so far. We did 2 last week. We went to Connecticut and Spain. We're saving so much CO2 by doing this virtually, And we're off to France next week, I believe. We're doing Lava Jug and Sue Java's coming up soon as well. So we're going global very soon.
Awesome.
That's cool. Okay.
Cool.
So what else, Joris? What's new in 1.13?
Okay, So yeah, Stuart is going to show us the what I think is probably the best thing of 1.13. He'll demo that and blow everybody's mind. But I'll go through a quick recap of what the rest of the noteworthy features are. So here we have now remember 2 releases ago or something we introduced REST Easy Reactive, fully non-blocking JAX-RS API. And stuff, but at the time we hadn't implemented the microprofile REST client based on that architecture. So with 1.13, that client arrives. It's I don't remember what we call it, but it's microprofile implementation based on the REST Easy Reactive core. So now you can do full non-blocking calls. So it's basically a drop-in replacement for the Quarkus REST client, I think. Yeah, so it's a drop-in replacement for that. So definitely check that out. Now, what else do we have?
So
go ahead.
Because I haven't. So one thing is it means that my clients, my client code, can now be, do a ton more requests.
Okay, so basically, now what we do is that uses non-blocking I/O, which means you don't have to have a thread pool to make it a sync and fit into the rest of the non-blocking async flow. So basically you can stay on the event loop from start to end without having to make any changes, right? That's the basic idea. So you just continue to use the REST client. You return uni or multi types from Mutiny, and everything just magically works.
And you say, did you mean when you said drop-in replacement or just a replacement?
It is because it implements the microprofile specification, right? So
okay. Oh, but that's blocking, is it?
Depends on the return type.
Exactly.
So if you're returning uni or a completion stage, it's non-blocking. Okay. But the old version was still using Apache HTTP client under the covers. So even if you returned a sort of reactive type, you'd still have to delegate to a thread pool to do that work.
Got it.
Yeah, and then bring the result back. So yeah, now it's non-blocking all the way. So even better.
Okay, so you get two good solutions here. Like the one thing that's nice about REST reactive is you can use full reactive if you want to, but if you don't, you still get a benefit of like you have a blocking API that might be simple for use case.
Absolutely.
The backend is faster, and the same now with the client API. You can either be blocking or async. It's just always in the background. It's using events.
Yes.
And therefore better. Yeah.
That is correct.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's a good thing. Now, what else do we have? We have remember, like everybody that uses Quarkus uses the native image test, right? To anyone who wants to test their application on native, use the native image test. Now we have a generalization of that, which we call the Quarkus integration test. So there's an annotation called Quarkus integration test. And what that does is basically it runs the application, it runs the artifact, whatever the artifact was. So basically, if you have a native image, it'll run that. If you have a container, it'll run that. If you have a container that had the native image, it will run that and execute all your HTTP tests against that launched black box application. So think of it as the native image test only expanded to include other types of artifacts.
So does it mean that user has to change anything, or it's just that we expanded it?
Yes, you could change native image. Well, you can continue to use native image test, but if you're like building a container and you wanted to test the container, you just change that to Quarkus integration test and it just works.
So one of the big pain points that this will help with is that even though we have the ability to build a native image using Docker, if you're on a Mac, if you build one of those native images using Docker, then you can't actually test it with native image test because it's built a Linux executable. So with this, you can then test that executable in a container as well. So actually run native image tests on Mac without needing to install VM locally. So if you're a big user, if you're a Mac user, this could help you out a lot.
Well, same for Windows, I guess.
Yes.
Well,
yeah, same for Windows.
My Raspberry Pi, I can do it too. It's good. Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Right.
Yeah. Then the other thing really cool. A lot of people use WebSockets, right? But up until now, we've had to force servlets on those folks. But now with work Stuart did, he completely removed the servlet dependency, let's say, when you're doing WebSockets. So yeah, now you can do REST Easy Reactive with WebSockets as well, and continue to use like all that non-blocking awesome stuff and get rid of all the unnecessary servlet dependencies.
So this is for serving WebSocket, right?
Yeah, and for the client as well.
It does. Okay, because that was the one I asked like a few months back. I was doing a WebSocket client. I was like, oh, I'm dragging in stuff I didn't expect. So that's fixed now?
It will still drag in the server part. I don't have a pure client implementation, but it won't drag in servlet and undertow and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it probably could be split out a bit more.
So okay, so I still because my issue was that the client always it started the serving stuff, which it didn't need. That was the
it will still do that. So
okay,
that could probably be split up even more.
Future fix. Got it.
Yeah. What else do we have? I think Hibernate Reactive has been it's graduated to 1.0, right? So that's really important.
Yeah, but I think it's still we have CR1 in the 1.13.
Okay, right.
I don't think the GA is up, but
okay. It's graduated to stable now, so it should be good to go. What else do we have? A couple of things Stuart's going to talk about. Oh, Kafka 2.7. That's around the latest. And then there's also another Kafka improvement, which is important, but it'll be difficult to see now. So it's important in future versions when we'll have the you'll be able to run Kafka on Kubernetes. The ability Quarkus will give you the ability to not configure anything like where Kafka is and what the authentication providers are and stuff like that. You will not have to use any configuration properties, and it will just work out of the box on Kubernetes.
Yeah.
And if you what's it called? If you combine that with what Stuart is going to show now, you'll see that you'll have like a zero configuration solution for running Kafka applications either locally or on Kubernetes. So that'll be awesome.
Yeah, and just connect to it. So this was, I think, we added this when you added the service binding extension. Was that 111?
It was like 112. We had that for 112. But
so service binding is this. There's a spec or a proposal for a spec in Kubernetes for automatically having other services like Postgres or MySQL or MongoDB or Kafka, or the list can be forever, that they can register so that when an app, whether that's Quarkus or Node or PHP app or whatever, they can request, I want to be bound up to it. And what we've done is we implemented the basics for it, the service binding implementation. And then in this release, we added I think we had already for Postgres, and now we have one for Kafka. And we are trying to do more of these to make it, just easier to wire things up for any like common what's that called? Common often
service.
seen services. So yeah.
So I think that's
we got a few questions, by the way. I see.
Oh.
One was Steph saying that he did a 1,000 HP client connection in parallel with the client in 1 second.
Right. Yeah, that's the Steph and I had looked at that one.
Yeah.
Basically,
So basically 1.13, if you want to DDoS someone, this is the least to use. Don't do that at home, please. And then I saw a question from Renee. Can I customize? Do you want to put that on the screen?
Yes, that's correct.
What? Can I customize how my app container is started for the integration tests? Run a container against different DBMMs, or run a container as a fast jar.
So
maybe you gotta cover. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, do yours.
Basically, the idea is that the Quarkus integration test will just run whatever the artifact you built is. So if you built a fast jar, it will run a fast jar. If you built a container that had the fast jar with like a Jib or Docker or something, it will run that. So there isn't any. It's actually running the final application, right? The final artifact that you mean to run in production. That's what it's going to run. So it's not like Quarkus test where the test can actually change stuff that belongs to the application. This is a total black box test, right?
Yeah. So if you want to do different combinations, you would do different profiles.
Yes, you can do different profiles. Yes.
Yeah. And Nick asked, last artifact built.
It depends on what he means, but so there's like sort of implicit ordering on these artifacts, right? So if you build a container, then yes, there is. You've obviously already either built a jar or a native binary, but what runs in this test is the last thing, which that's I guess what Nick means, which is the container, right?
Yeah. Okay. I think there's other things but these what we talk about here is the new noteworthy. There's also a lot of bug fixes stuff.
Yeah, there's always a lot more than.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go to the release notes, you'll see like 100 issues closed or something like that. 200 pull requests. So, they can't go through all of them.
Yeah. So if anyone listening here and have questions about something that they've seen been fixed or stuff, please just ask away. But otherwise, I think we got through the big ones. Well, except the ones that Stuart's going to cover, I think.
Yeah, which is the biggest, I would say. The one Stuart's going to talk about.
Let's go to you, Stuart. About
okay.
You can start with Jacoco. I can't even say it now.
Oh, okay. Well, I was planning on doing dev services first, but I can do Jacoco as well. Just give me 2 seconds. So it's always been possible to use Jacoco with Quarkus, but it's required a lot of configuration. So if you've ever used Jacoco before to do code coverage, you need to basically configure up a lot of stuff in Maven, and because of some of the instrumentation tricks we do, the online instrumentation of Jacoco won't work. So basically, this feature just makes it a lot easier to use Jacoco, and it should also make it a lot easier to use Jacoco in a multi-module Maven project, because at the moment, if you want to use Jacoco for any project, not just Quarkus in a multi-module project, it's quite difficult. It requires a lot of sort of Maven, XML, and general black magic to get it to work properly. So to show Jacoco off, what I'm going to do is just add the Jacoco dependency here. So, oops, Quarkus, add Quarkus -Jacoco. I need to do something here because I was originally planning on doing this the other way around. Now we'll run our tests and hope that it works. And so in theory, hopefully, all you need to do to run your test with code coverage is add this Quarkus Jacoco dependency, and then it just works out of the box.
So does it mean?
Test through.
Oh, good.
No, what were you going to say?
I was just going to ask. So this is you're showing tests here. Does it mean that if I add this, does also take effect during dev mode? Does it generate a Jacoco report?
No. It won't take effect in dev mode because you've scoped it to test. Oops, there's.
Okay.
I forgot to delete something else. Sorry.
And then just to clarify here, like if anyone had set up code coverage with Jacoco before, it's still working. This is just an easier way of making it happen, right?
Yeah, so your existing Jacoco config will work the same as normal. This will just make it kind of just work. So all you need to do is add this one single dependency. And then even for multi-module projects, this takes care of everything. And you can also configure Jacoco through Quarkus. So before, if you wanted to configure any of the report properties, you'd have to configure them in the Jacoco Maven plugin. While with this, it's just with this it will you can configure it using application.properties.
Very nice.
So, oops, I don't know why that took so long. No, something must have had to download in the background. So now that's run. Yeah, well, the test is run, so we don't need to see the rest of the build. And then if we have a look in target Jacoco-report, looks at CSV, we got our code report, our code coverage report for our quick start. And that's all the config you need to do. I don't have a demo for it, but it should also work with multi-module Maven projects and sort of take into account the data from each module and merge it all into one just clickable report, which is quite hard to do with the standard Maven plugin.
Yeah, I remember many nights where I tried to test. That is very nice. So literally just add the dependency to check Quarkus Jacoco and off you go.
Yeah. And if you don't want to use it all the time, you can just put this in a profile and only activate it when you want to do your code coverage.
But if you're saying if I change the scope to, well, remove the scope for test, it should also be applied during dev mode, I guess.
Yeah, but you don't really code coverage in dev mode doesn't really make sense because you're not running any tests.
Oh
well,
human tests. Okay. Well, I get it.
See how much of the application you've clicked around. Yeah, like maybe. I guess you could. I don't think it won't work. But you could potentially do something like that in future if there was any interest in it. But
yeah. Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for disturbing your flow, but you go back to you. The other one.
So now I'm going to talk about something that we're calling dev services. So what dev services does is that it lets Quarkus automatically give you an external service like a database when you're running in dev or test mode. So you don't have to manually sort of set up a database yourself. Quarkus can just provide it for you automatically. And at the moment, we only support databases for the 1.13 release. But as time goes on, we're going to add more and more options. Like we'll probably add Kafka soon and possibly Keycloak and Mongo. And eventually, we'll probably cover most of the external services that your application can connect to. So in order to show you, I think the best way to see this in action is with a demo. So what I've got here is our Hibernate ORM Quick Start that I've upgraded to 1.13. And at the moment, if I try to run it, let me just right thing. If I try and run it, so if I do nvn Quarkus dev, we'll see that it fails because I don't actually have PostgreSQL running on my machine. Oh wait, why is that running?
I think you removed the properties, right?
No. Wonder. I think that previous Docker instance was still running.
Maybe from the test or something like that.
But yeah, test containers can sometimes take a second to shut stuff down, I think. So now it should fail because I don't have PostgreSQL running. So we can see that now, according to the README, I'd need to go in and run a certain Docker command to get a Docker database up and running, or install Postgres and manually configure it. But with dev containers, what I can do here is basically come in and delete all my database config and then run Quarkus dev. And now what Quarkus will do is it will see that you've got a database extension installed, you've got PostgreSQL installed, but you don't have anything configured, but you've got an application that uses it. So as it starts, it will use test containers just to start up PostgreSQL for you automatically, and then automatically configure Quarkus to connect to that test container instance. So you don't need to provide any configuration whatsoever. So now we've got the Hibernate Quick Start working in dev mode without any database configuration.
That's just crazy. If you ask me, that's just crazy. That's amazing.
I haven't. Yeah, nice to see a demo of it. Like, oh, this is very simple.
Yeah, it's a
that's the magic of it. It's so simple. Yeah.
Because just to compare it to what we otherwise would have done, right? Yeah, you would have added settings in the properties. If you've used test containers manually, you would have to a custom URL or some bootstrap.
Well, you couldn't really use test containers for dev mode. There was a way we could use them in tests where we used a Quarkus test resort and sort of started the container. But then for actually using dev mode, all our solution in the README was basically copy and paste this Docker command and run it, and hope that you don't have an existing Docker running on the same port with a different config.
Exactly. Right.
So it's all very clunky.
And I think Steph has is making a good point here. He's saying that instead of removing it, you could just prefix it with prod, right?
Yeah, that was what I was going to mention.
Oh, right.
Now is that for production, you might actually want some settings in here. So if you want to do it just for production, you can do %prod for all your properties. And that would mean that they only take effect when you're running the actual produce jar. But depending on where you're deploying to, you might not even want to do that, because if you're deploying to a container or to OpenShift, you can probably just pass it in as environment variables and not actually have anything in application.properties. Just pass like Quarkus _database _JDBC _URL.
Or do the service binding we were talking about earlier.
But don't we have to at least have the DB kind? I thought that was used for the...
Not anymore, because, like,
now if you've only got a single driver, you might still need it if you've got multiple drivers installed. But at the moment now, if you've only got a single driver, we just assume that that's the one you want. So I just showed it with dev mode. So we'll also show it with tests. So the way we were testing these quick starts is we have this Fabricate Maven plugin, which starts Docker before the test run and then stops it. And that's what that Docker process that was hanging around would have been, because it wouldn't have cleaned up properly because I terminated the run. So now we can just delete all this and go npm install.
So this means also it gets start and stop between every test, or is it running for the whole test?
Yeah, no, for the whole suite. So it just gets started once at the start.
Okay.
It's taking a sec to start up. There we go. So you can see here that it started the container, Postgres has started, and all done. But one thing that we mentioned before with that DB kind is that the reason why people have said that they think it's useful is because you may occasionally want to just include drivers for tests. Like you might want to use H2 for tests and Postgres in production. So when you run your tests, you have H2 available in test scope, but dev services actually automatically detects that and will, if you have a test scoped database driver and a normal scoped one, then it will automatically use the test one in tests. So here, if I'm going to install the H2 driver with a scope of test, run npm install, and we can see that rather than starting Postgres, it's just started a in-memory H2 database and runs a test against that. If you want to install more drivers than just one, then you can use the DB kind still, and it will use that to figure out the correct one. So yeah, that's basically all you have to do. It is actually a bit more configurable than just that. So you can specify things like the container image you want to use. Like if I did quarkus.datasource.devservices.container image, I hope, equals PostgreSQL 11.
Nice.
11. You should be able to start with that image, that particular image.
Yeah, instead of the default. Nice.
Yeah.
So, and this would be the same idea that once we start adding, because this, like you said, it works for Postgres, all the DBC bound thing. Does it work for the reactive data sources too?
Yeah, it works for the reactive data sources as well. Cool. I don't have a demo for that, but if I just opened the the reactive one and delete the config, it will work.
But then the idea is, yeah, like you have the same thing with Kafka, like Quarkus Kafka.devservices.container.
Yeah, you'll have the same thing with Kafka. Yeah, if we're using a Kafka-based image, then yeah, we'd have the same configuration. Because not all of these are run as an image. Like H2 is run just directly in process. So like we could potentially run Kafka in process as well if we wanted to, but that's a discussion for the next release.
So this is not even tied to test container. Test container is just one of the things we can use.
It's an implementation detail, basically.
Nice. Okay.
So something else I just mentioned is that we do also provide this for some proprietary databases, but if you run, you need to accept a license. So if I just try and run with MS SQL just out of the box, we'll see that. Wait, how did that work? That's
remember your values?
Did I get? Oh, I know.
Maybe
when
when
I was playing with this demo before, I would have created the file, and even though it's gone, it would still be sitting in the target. So basically, if you run with a proprietary database, there's a special file you need to create, which is this container license acceptance.txt. So under my resources, actually copy that.
Yeah, and this is the same. This is the same approach. If you use test containers, it's the same approach.
Yeah, so like it's actually using test containers under the hood. I've just it's just sort of an implementation detail of test containers.
Sure.
But not one that I want to circumvent because I don't want to be automatically accepting license conditions for people. That sounds like something that would get me in trouble. But now you can just use MS SQL and it just works.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and I said, like, for other services we'll do more. And then the question we had when we actually presented this to a few people, most people were happy and said, it is awesome. We simplify stuff and we cut things out. But then, of course, there's people who don't like Docker. Oh, sorry, not don't like. They don't have Docker available on their machine or Podman or that kind of thing. So we don't have a solution for that yet. But so if you don't have Docker or can't run virtualization on a machine, you can't use this feature. But one trick I learned,
you can use H2. You can't use it with a real database.
Yes, you can use H2. But just the trick, so people might not be aware of, you can do is like Docker, or rather, the OC Docker. The Docker protocol is a remote protocol. So you could actually technically be in a situation where you're allowed to run Docker somewhere else than on your machine. You could just set up the Docker environment on your machine to point to that remote one, and it'll work in the same way. We've been talking about someday in the future of enabling that for if you have a Kubernetes cluster or an OpenShift instance. Just use that to start these instances for test running. But those are ideas so far. But that's the kind of thing that this enables, which will be fun.
Yeah, this is still like version 1 of the feature. There's still a lot more things that we can add. And even each sort of individual area will have its own extra features and config. So with Keycloak, for instance, we could add sort of config so that you can just configure some test roles in application.properties and you just get a Keycloak instance with those test usernames and passwords just to make it really easy to get started developing, that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool. So
yeah, it's amazing.
People are quiet. It's just Steph who's very happy.
I'm sure everybody's having the same reaction. Say, it just works now. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do we care? Yeah.
And I think another point that we should mention is that the way Stuart did this is that it's very configurable, meaning like people that have like other extensions like Infinispan, Hazelcast, they can easily like make their extension work with this dev services, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's it's definitely designed to be pluggable, and hopefully most of the external services that we that we provide support for will be able to support through this, just so that if you're a developer using this, you can just check out basically any project that your company has, or that's using this, and just go nvn Quarkus dev, and it just sets up and wires up its own environment, so you don't have to sort of do anything. The projects kind of just know how to run themselves.
I feel we need to come up with some kind of terminology here, like some kind of, I don't know, like some cool name like TDD or something that describes this.
Quarkus Compose?
I don't know. It's just magic. It should have its own name.
So, well, we call it dev services, but yeah, it's like, yeah. So just to compare for people, like you could do this again if you like some some setup by Docker Compose or etc. And of course, if you're going to use something special, you might still use Docker Compose. But if you're just using like the Quarkus platform and ecosystem, then it just kind of works. And Steph says, yes, we call it, you know what I mean, development. Yeah. So right.
And then Alexei's saying what everybody else is already thinking, that people are getting used to Stuart's breakthroughs are spoiling us.
Yeah. So no, it's getting too easy. So no, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is super impressive.
So yeah, I don't think there's really much more I can talk about with this, because I could just kind of work.
It just works.
Go through every database and start them all, but I don't think we really need to see that.
Yeah.
So if
anyone, go ahead, Sue.
If you've got some time left, there is something I'm working on for a future release of Quarkus that I could give a bit of a sneak preview of.
Yeah. Let me just say, anyone who have questions or about 1.13, please do ask them. Even though that Stuart now is going to talk about something that's not 1.13, is things that we found out during 1.13 that we do want to do, or at least is exploring. So yeah, go ahead, Stuart. Show the one you want to do, and anyone listening, just ask questions away, and we will merge them in.
So I've changed the version up to 999 snapshot to use a local version of Quarkus I've built, and now I'm just going to run nvn Quarkus dev, and wait, this is still using MS SQL. I might change it to something faster for the. Use H2.
Oh, I didn't realize. Yeah, you said it before, but I didn't realize before that you can literally just change the dependency. You don't. That's the only thing you have to do now. Like no setup. That's yeah. That's funny.
So now when I've started Quarkus, we've got this extra little line here, which is tests or pass, 1 test or run, 0 is skipped. So what we're doing now with this feature is continuous testing. So as I change my tests, they'll get run again automatically, and we see the results pretty much instantly. So then I can change it back, and we see the results again. And this applies to these resources here as well. So if I say delete this bit of code, no one's using it, so whatever. Oh, turns out someone was using it, better put it back. And this is actually really, as you can see, it's really fast. Like the tests run in about the same amount of time that it takes for dev mode tests to run. Well, for a dev mode restart to happen, because basically the JVM's already warmed up, everything's already there. There's no initialization phase, and it's also really fine-grained. So I might need to create a new class to show you this, because at the moment there's 1 test and 1 resource. So I could add a delete service. Actually, only got 1 test, I need a new test. So I'll add a new add a new fruit entity test.
Yeah, see, Steph is saying that it's faster than he could run a test from the command line or IDE, which is true.
Yeah, well, if you run a test from the IDE, like the IDE still does have to think about it for a few seconds, which is what someone was complaining about, which kind of started this whole process. So I'll write a new test here, and so this will just test using the entity manager.
I do actually want to, while you write that code, I just want to say that this way we actually talked about this continuous test like since forever. I think that this could be fun to explore, but we never really did it until, and I forgot the guy's name now, but he was coming from JavaScript or some other
Ruby, I think.
Ruby, yes, where he was used to this kind of testing, and we were like, "Hey, like that kind." Well, Stuart was like, "That can't be true. Let's fix it." And then he came up with this, and I'm like, "Oh." And mind you, this was not because we didn't want to do it. It's just there's all those stuff that we talked about, all the small pieces. It's just kind of being added over time. And then suddenly the one person comes in and say, "Why can't I do this?" And then we're like, "Oh, we can now." And then it just gets fixed.
Yeah. So it's going to work with remote dev as well?
No, maybe. Like it's not. Like yes, eventually we can. It's not like my number one priority. But I'll basically just working on getting it working here first. But there's no reason why it can't work on remote dev. But
we don't have the. Do we have the? Yeah. Well, the test would have to run on the client side, wouldn't it? But yeah.
No. Good results list dot size. So this just adds a pair, and then that failed. Transaction not active. My test is broken. I haven't tested this at all. There's a good chance that this demo will go horribly wrong. So all tests passed. So you notice that because I added a new test, it only ran that one test. I didn't need to rerun this other one because it knows that nothing has affected it. But now, if I change this fruit class, I'm not going to make a big change. I'll just add some white space so that it recompiles it. So now it's rerun two of them. And it's failing because there's already a fruit named pear in. Oh, this test adds a fruit named pear. I might change this. So my tests aren't working very well. I'll call this one a pineapple. So this one.
Hassan was asking for, recall something similar as jest watch mode for, as in jest watch mode for JS JavaScript. And this is basically the same setup,
so now
Gradle,
see.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
I'll just say, so one thing Gradle actually have, if people use Gradle, it has a continuous test feature too. I forgot, it's Gradle Test Watch or something. But I actually compared it to this. I tried to run them side by side, and this actually runs way faster because it's kind of in the running process, and it picks up changes better. So great. Again, great. There is a Gradle approach to do this, but it's a more generic. Where this is kind of, again, if you're in Quarkus, this just works, or will just work.
So now I've got two tests. One that tests the endpoint, and another one that just kind of tests the entity itself using the entity manager directly and doesn't touch the endpoint. So when we saw that when I changed that fruit, that these two tests are on. But now if I just change this endpoint, then it only runs one test because you can actually detect that this fruit entity test doesn't need to be run because none of the code it touched has been changed. So it's very fine-grained and it will only run the tests that are actually appropriate that are basically relevant to your changes. So even if you've got a big test suite that takes a little while, this should still stay relevant because it'll only run the tests that are actually testing the bit of code that you're working on in most situations.
And Steph is asking, how does it know how to do that?
Basically, when it starts, it runs all the tests, and it just tracks which code is touched by which tests. So, and then using that sort of dependency graph, you can always figure out which tests might potentially, well, like with about 99% accuracy, figure out exactly what is being touched. And even for things like HTTP requests where there's no link between the bytecode, so you can't do any analysis of the bytecode, this tracing approach will still work.
Oh,
awesome.
Nice.
So like there is another one of these, like another continuous testing thing I saw in Java. I think it was Infinitest, and it looked like it just analyzed the bytecode to try and figure out the flow, but it would fall down for a lot of what Quarkus does, where you're testing directly via HTTP requests, where there's no direct bytecode link. So that's why this approach sort of really works well for Quarkus.
Awesome.
So
and this I guess this idea can be expanded to similar for other endpoint like WebSockets or Kafka or any.
Oh yeah, it automatically just works for anything. So like any code that gets run while, like any user code that gets run while that test is running is basically recorded, and then if that code changes, it knows it has to run that test.
Okay, I haven't, like, does it, if you do anything, this assumes everything is sequential, or does it work even if it's parallel tests? Or
yeah, it'll work even if it's parallel tests. Well, wait, no, it won't run the tests in parallel, but like if your test is doing multi-threaded stuff, then yeah, that still works.
Okay, but it assumes one test at a time, which is fine. I'm not.
Yeah, it does. It can only run one test at a time like that. I could make it. Well, I could possibly make it. No, I probably can't make it parallel. That would get very tricky tracking which test was.
Yeah, no, but I think I can live with the fact that you're not running the full test suite. You're only running one time, so it doesn't have to be that fast. And anyway, when you're running dev mode, you don't want to have a ton of concurrent tests running at the same time. So.
George is asking if it runs the failed test first, like the ones that it knows have failed, if they're the first ones to run, or if it's just like, do you run them all the ones you know are affected?
It doesn't run them in order at the moment, but we don't want to be really noisy in the logs, so it doesn't actually tell you the results until the end, because I don't want to be like Surefire where I spit out like 100 lines of output that's trying to be just a status line at the bottom,
right?
Which is so you can see that it basically it just tries to limit the output, and it's actually making more output than what I thought it would, because I'm not blocking this Hibernate output. So I need to look into that. So ideally when it runs, all that will change is a status line. It won't get all this output, but it looks like I need to stop Hibernate writing to std out somehow. But this is still work in progress. So the other thing I'll show is that there is some dev console integration for this. So if I break my test, you can see I've got the dev console open here. It's just immediately changed to one test failed, and you can see it's got like the little status icon when the tests are running, but they run so quickly you don't really see it. It's like only up for half a second, and then you can click here and you can see you can pause tests if like you're working on something and you know everything's broken, you don't care right now. You can easily just pause them and then they just stop running. You can do whatever you want. And you can obviously just disable this feature with config as well. And there's the option to rerun all tests, but I only added that like an hour ago, so I don't know if it works. It does work.
Awesome.
And there's a very ugly results page that needs a lot of love, but the results page should be able to display both like the logs that were captured when running the test, give you a stack trace. Doesn't do any of that at the moment. We should be able to like click and go straight to the IDE.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Possibly even show the offending code just here in the page.
George, by the way, isn't that featured in 1.13?
Yeah, if Stuart opens up the console here, if he opens up the console that streams stuff,
you need
or the beans, yeah.
Here.
Yeah, if you open up one of them, any of the.
Does it
need to be a stack trace?
You're in the log view, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So here we've got list of fruits. Line 23. Yeah. So it's going straight to the problematic line.
You want to outline it, Georgios? Because this is what he just showed now is a feature that is in 1.13, which we forgot to mention.
So basically, yeah, if Stuart also goes to the beans in the dev console. So the idea here is that we want to provide as much integration with the IDE as we can. So if you go to, I think to the top, like one of your, that one. If you click on it, it should open it in the IDE.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see what. So that one's not gonna work for sure, but the first one should have worked. Anyway, so the idea here is actually that you click on something that the dev console has that is a class, and it should show up. It should open up in your IDE. Now I don't know why this one isn't working. IntelliJ should always work, basically. Anyway, I'll have to check this with Stuart.
Isn't necessarily the most up-to-date version of IntelliJ. I don't know if that matters.
That's not a problem. No, basically, if you have the idea script on as part of the path, it should just work.
Yeah, it's opening the IDE, but it's not going to the right file.
Yeah, it's somehow it gets.
We'll fix it at some point.
But the cool thing is this is done in a way that works in principle with any IDE.
Yes.
But we support VS Visual Code, IntelliJ, and Eclipse and
NetBeans and NetBeans.
Oh, that's Philip. He added it. Yes. But the cool thing is it does it securely too, right? So it's handling in a way that it's not going to open up unless you are, it's you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. What's it called? Eclipse. Just for those if you're an Eclipse user, there's this annoying thing that OS X Eclipse, if you're on a Mac Eclipse, the Eclipse actually cannot do this trick. Well, it can, but it'll start a new IDE every time. So you have to, if you're on Linux and Windows, it works. If Eclipse is in your path. On Mac, there is a little trick you have to do, which I probably should blog about, and then you can get it to work. But I think also in the future, we might even be able to work around that limitation.
Yeah, so this is one of those things that basically it's the same point Stuart made, that we have like version 1 in 1.13, but yeah, it'll need some more love, some more fixing some edge cases, like more integration into other parts of the dev console. So yeah.
And this is one of the things I was looking forward to when we started looking into Quarkus, what we could do with developer experiences. The fact that we have this split between dev and product, but the framework knows it, means that we can have a dev mode where we can link to any kind of tool. So now we're doing it for the IDE, but we could also do it for the OpenShift console or your Amazon live deployment or anything out there.
Bundle in a whole test runner.
Yeah, and a bundle a whole test runner. And it doesn't affect your production result at all.
That's what I find, like just from an architectural standpoint. I mean, I find that just amazing, right? You can do so much stuff at dev mode and not affect your production mode one bit. I mean, I think that's just awesome.
Yeah. And you can still use your Maven Gradle integration if you want to, but for the stuff that we include this way, it's maintained and guaranteed to work with a specific version of Quarkus. So every time a new version of Quark comes out, all these features will work together. So at least, knock on wood, depending on our tests, because the old one didn't work. But this is there's a lot of potential in this stuff. It's going to be fun. So yeah. Okay. Well, I actually learned something. I didn't know that the continuous testing was actually that good, but that's amazing. But we didn't get much questions. Steve, were you saying anything?
No, I was just echoing what you said. It's just amazing. I am continually blown away by all these little small things I keep learning about Quarkus that just makes my developer life better. We've got to get better at sharing people. We probably want to do a whole insights about 50 things you just didn't know about Quarkus.
Yes. So, well, there'll be more of those, I'm sure. So, yeah. Okay. But anyway, that was the episode of 113. For anyone who's listening, there's a core release out now. The full one comes out later this week. And yeah, if you have any questions, stuff, we on Zulip chats, Stack Overflow, the email list, etc. And yeah, Alicia, I can't says hello. I'll say hello him too. Yeah. And I forgot, we actually have plans for next time too. Let me just check what that actually is. That is moved a little bit because of Easter. I believe it is. I should have checked this before but what's the next episode? It is. What are you, 45, 46?
No, 43.
43, yeah.
43, yeah. Yes, it's writing Quark extensions with Peter Pakalka, I think. So he'll be coming on he's done a lot of the Apache Camel extensions. So he's not on the main core of Quarkus, but he's been part of the Quarkus platform for a long time. And he's going to tell us how we are bad and makes his life hard. But hopefully also talk a little about how easy it has been to write extensions, and so everyone can do it. But that'll be next time. Yeah. And that's going to be, I think, Wednesday, but we'll get the calendar updated just so we don't conflict with the May Day holiday in Europe. Cool. Then thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah, really good.
Bye-bye. See you, everybody.
Bye.